Hi everyone, I'm Nicholas Tutora. Welcome to Tutora Time. Our freedoms are being taken away from us. Every day we see them dwindling. Right now they're going to go after the Second Amendment. They're going to make it almost impossible and practically criminal for people to own a gun. The Constitution makes it very clear that the rights of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, overreaching fees and taxes and background checks and psychological evaluations, all of this is infringing on the people's right to bear guns. Folks, when is this going to stop? I have a very simple question for you. Is liberty dead? Is liberty gone? Because without action, freedom and liberty are just words. The people who founded this country, they put everything that they had on the line in order to establish this country. George Washington was a wealthy person, and when he signed up to be the general of the Revolution, he knew that he was putting his life on the line, as did all the other people who drafted the Declaration of Independence and signed their name to it. What they were really signing was a death warrant. If they won, they would have founded a new country. If they lost, the British would have hanged them. What's going to happen to freedom in America? How did we get here? One of the ways we got here, which started off as being seen as something positive, was getting rid of the draft. This happened after the Vietnam War. It was to prevent people from being drafted into the military for these open-ended wars. But you know what? Now that the military is not staffed by a draft, it basically has turned into the president's private mercenary force. Because there's no longer a draft, there's no more check on the power of the military. We might not have realized it, but the draft was the check on the military. You wouldn't have endless overseas wars. You wouldn't be in Afghanistan for 19 and 20 years if people were drafted into the army, because people would push back and say that they don't want their children, or they themselves don't want to go and fight these wars. The elimination of the draft turned the military into a private mercenary force, and that's exactly how they're being used. Why do you think right now the left is teeing up to use the military against their own citizens? They're on a witch hunt. They want to purge the military of white supremacy. They're handing out literature and they're indoctrinating people in the military that the country is a foundationally racist country, which is a complete lie. And they're teaching people in the military that they themselves are racist. Why would somebody want to defend a racist country? Why would somebody give their life to defend a flawed country? The first person to die at the Boston Massacre was a man named Crispus Attucks. He was mixed race, half black, half Native American. They say he was either born free or was a freed slave. But yet, he stood right on the front line to defend the United States of America. Clearly, he did not think it was a hopelessly racist country. The tactics of the left are well calculated, and they've been thought out on every level. It's basically a psychological attack. There was just a story yesterday about how China is going to reinstitute and push programs that enhance masculinity in their society, because they see if masculinity is diminished, the country can no longer be defended. And this is what's happened in the United States. As more women have come into the discussion, they bring feminine energy with them, which only makes sense. And there's good parts to it, but there's also parts that aren't so good. I mean, the women on the right, they love their guns and they're willing to defend themselves. But when you bring en masse women from the left, these are not people who are going to fight for liberty.
I had a pretty traumatizing event. I had a very close encounter where I thought I was going to die. And I thought I did not know if I was going to make it to the end of that day alive. Once it was an extremely traumatizing event. And it is not an exaggeration.
These are not people who believe in defending their country. These are people who are willing to roll over to the powers that be. If you think that the feminization of men that's going on in this country is being done by accident, you're wrong. There's a reason they want your male children to be gender confused and gender bending and transgender. There's a reason that they're trying to eliminate male pronouns and all pronouns basically from the English language and from our daily language. But while we're doing that, our enemies are not doing that. China is enhancing masculinity in their society. In the Islamic world, women barely have any rights, so the male energy is what dominates. And when our country collapses, if you don't think China or fundamentalist Islamic countries are going to march right in, you're dreaming. One of the phrases that people keep talking about since the riot on January 6th was how violence is wrong, always. Now, I agree that the violence at the Capitol was wrong, and I agree that violence is always a last resort. But is there ever any place where people need to defend their liberty? Is there any scenario where the citizens need to protect themselves through the use of arms against tyranny? If you're saying that the people can never stand up to their government, that means we must accept whatever the government hands us. If the government wants to strip us of all our rights, violence is wrong. If the government wants to imprison us illegally, fighting back is wrong. If the government wants to obliterate the Constitution, fighting back is wrong. No matter what they do, we're saying fighting back is wrong. In my mind, this is more of a feminine energy than a masculine energy. Clearly, the narrative of never defending freedom through physical force is not true. We have sent people to Vietnam, to Korea, World War II. Right now, we're in Afghanistan, Iraq, all these places. Why? Supposedly there to defend freedom. So defending freedom overseas militarily is acceptable, but not in our own country. The Second Amendment is there to prevent people from being dominated by tyranny. And little by little, and maybe faster than that, we are being subject to tyrannical government in this country. People have lost the entire understanding of what it means to self-govern. Many people in this country, the majority of people in this country maybe now, see the government as up here. They're a ruling class and they're ruling down to the people. We are supposed to have elected the leaders. They're supposed to answer to us. But with H.R. 1 going through the House, that's going to be obliterated forever. The left is simply going to stuff the ballot box whenever they want. The battlefield doesn't look the way it did in 1776. I don't even know if something like that is even possible, but we must fight back in places that we can. One of the things we need to do, we need to have massive, nonviolent resistance and non-cooperation to these edicts that they're passing down.
You don't think we're just going to walk out of India?
Yes. In the end, you will walk out. Because 100,000 Englishmen simply cannot control 350 million Indians if those Indians refuse to cooperate. And that is what we intend to achieve. Peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation, till you yourself see the wisdom of leaving, Your Excellency.
We are being ruled right now by tyrants and through mandates. These mandates are not the way laws are created in the United States. We have legislation. We're supposed to vote for people who are supposed to go there to pass legislation on our behalf. We're not supposed to be ruled by executive orders and mandates that are handed down that the people never had a voice in creating. It's a tragic time in the United States, something that I never thought I'd live to see. I always thought people would come down on the side of freedom. And when they talk about it, was this election on the up and up, one of the clues is look at what the Democrats are doing since they've won the election. They're stripping First Amendment rights. They're opening the borders. They're stripping gun rights. They're doing everything possible. They're canceling culture. They're canceling books. And they feel emboldened to do it. I don't know what's the matter with people and why they would go for this, but we've seen these authoritarian dictators before in history, and unfortunately, we're about to see it right at home in the United States. What we have left are a few tools. One of them is free speech. So we have to keep speaking out. We have to keep pushing back as best we can against this. Well, I'm Nicholas Tutora, and I'll talk to you again soon on Tutora Time. Hi, everyone. It's Nicholas Tutora. Now more than ever, it's so important to keep free speech alive. So make sure you click the subscribe button so you can stay part of our conversation.